Hi Emma, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and do this YouTube episode with me. I'm really excited because this is a biggie for so many people.
Oh no, it's a pleasure. It's really good to come on and to see you, and hopefully we'll be able to share a few bits and pieces that will help everybody, and also just almost to calm those fears and those nerves and all those things that everybody worries about, and to know that actually it's not that bad, and just a few simple things, and we'll have it all sorted.
Oh, I love this. It's so helpful. I couldn't have thought of a better person to do this. I've brought my cup of tea. I thought we'd just have a nice chat and make this friendly and casual because actually people do get really afraid. And we are talking about finances today, aren't we? Business
Yeah,
finances,
yeah.
setting up your selling venture as a business, if that's appropriate to you, just kind of unpicking all of those questions and things. And I just think this is really exciting because we've kind of come full circle. And here we've got an opportunity now to bond over my new venture,
Yeah.
where before you've been a client of mine in the coaching business. I've been a client of yours for my other business for the financial work and the business work that we're doing. And so it's really nice that you've agreed to come on here and chat finances because I think a lot of people are very afraid about all of the stuff. It just feels like such a mess of kind of conflicting information and things, and people aren't sure about, selling their own stuff and selling for profit and all of that.
Yeah, no, we'll go through all of that and just chat through it and hopefully give everybody a little bit more confidence and a little bit of clarity and where to go for that information and things. Because, as you say, there's so much information out there. Hopefully, we'll just be able to help everybody with a few bits and pieces and know where to get started.
Amazing. So would you be able to briefly tell us your name and
Yeah.
what you do? That would be fabulous to sort before we launch into the questions.
I'm Emma Middleton and trained as an accountant straight from university. I did a degree and then I went and trained with a big firm and worked in accountancy. And then I had three children. So after I had the first one, I went back to work and that was all great. And then I had the second one. I was kind of like, oh, trying to juggle full-time work, and I'm married to a farmer. So we live on a farm in rural Lincolnshire and we had our own business at home as well. So at that point, I went on that journey and I became self-employed. And I was just doing bookkeeping at that time. And that was kind of my step into business. So I know exactly what it feels like. I've been there and done it. I'm not just coming at this from a professional point of view. And my husband and I, as I said, we run our own farming business and things. So we've done various different businesses along the way. And we've learned as we've gone along as well. But now the girls have got older, I've had a bit more time, and I've launched into helping women mainly in their own businesses for them to get started and also to know what to do, maybe strategically as well as they grow their business, not just about keeping the records. But it's all about helping people so you're not having that sleepless night. There's not that horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach if a letter comes through the post from HMRC. You know where to go for that information and know that it's going to be okay. And as long as we just keep some simple records and receipts and things, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, it's all going to be all right.
Oh, I love that. And I can genuinely vouch for the fact that you are so lovely and caring and considerate and thoughtful in your approach. And you and I have worked together for a long time. And anything I know now is down to what I've learned from you over the years. So I'm very thankful and I'm delighted that you're here. So let's kick off. I've got notes on my phone. So if I'm glancing down, just forgive me. There's a kind of within the selling industry, if you like, people often start out just selling their own personal belongings and then maybe they start to venture into selling things for profit. But if they're just starting out selling their personal belongings, do they need to worry about tax or telling HMRC?
No, so personal is personal. We all do a little bit of kids have grown out of those clothes or something like that, popping them on Vinted, or you decorated a room and there's a lamp that doesn't fit in anymore or something like that. So personal is personal. That's absolutely fine. If we get a little bit more technical, we start to talk about there's a trading allowance. So the revenue's general principle is that if you have more than £1,000 turnover in a tax year, so the tax year always runs from the 6th of April through to the 5th of April the following year. So if you have more than £1,000 worth of sales, they're going to call that a business. If you are at a point where you are selling personal belongings and you do turn over £1,000 or more, and you are genuinely sure they are personal, you have got to be able to provide some proof for that to HMRC. Because they're
Okay.
going to start questioning that, as they would. They're kind of like, well, where's all this come from? And particularly if you start doing it consistently, they're going to want to see, when did you buy that? You know, where did you buy it from? And that kind of information. But
Okay.
generally, personal is personal. And if you're buying things to resell them, that's business.
Okay, so let's just break that down because that's really interesting. So the minute you hit £1,000 worth of sales, then we are talking, we need to be registering and so on, which we can talk about in a minute.
We're talking very generally here, but
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
find yourself selling, more than £1,000 worth of things, then get some advice and keep records.
Perfect. Okay. And that is the grey, isn't it? And I think
Mhm.
people need to, I suggest, and I mean, for myself, we've just sold bits of like my dad's clothing and, things like that. And we've just logged it all. And I
Mhm.
think, is that, I guess, my mum has passed me things and gone, oh, can you stick this on Vinted? And so I think it becomes a bit grey when you're almost selling on behalf of other people as well. Is there,
Yeah, it is. You've got to be really careful with that. And again, it's just keeping it in that limit. If it's just a few items of clothing and things like that, you're going to keep within below the allowance. If you're starting to sell big things that are worth more money, then that is different, and potentially it becomes their, say for your mum, because she's not very technological and doesn't understand how Vinted works, then maybe she needs a Vinted account and you just help her with that. If it's going to be some big sums of money, because the risk is that if the revenue came, and they can look at, and I don't want to scare people at all, that's
no,
the
no,
last thing I
no.
want to do, but they
Yeah.
can look at all of your records, they can look at all your personal bank statements, any business ones and things. So you just want to be able to explain exactly what has happened. But again, if we're talking big sums of money, just get some advice.
Okay, and things like children's toys and stuff that you're
Yeah.
just flagging off, just keeping a record that that was a personal toy and
Yeah.
it's not for profit and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Just keeping that record of what it was, just put an explanation, just have a little code or something, you highlight it in a colour or you put a P next to it or something, just so that you know that what it is.
okay, perfect. All right, that's amazing. Well, that kind of covers the second question, which was a mixture of personal items and selling for profit. So I know a lot of people like myself have come into this. We've started to source things at auctions, car boot sales, and so on to sell for profit. Obviously, you're stepping into the realms of having a business.
Mhm.
The minute you hit £1,000, people will start to panic and think, "Oh my goodness, now I need to pay tax."
Yeah,
So, but that's not necessarily the case, is it, with all of the so shall we break that down a little bit?
yeah. So again, it sort of depends a little bit. So let's just talk about somebody that's only doing this. They haven't got another job, another business, or anything else. They are purely working in this business. So everybody gets a personal allowance. It's just over £12,000. And that amount up, anything you earn up to that, you won't pay tax on that. So although you'll have to do a tax return, which we can come on to a little bit more about that a little bit later, but although you'll have to do a tax return, you won't necessarily be paying any tax until you're making the £12,000 profit rather than a turnover.
Right. Okay. So that's for people that just do this.
Yeah,
They get the personal tax allowance of 12,000,
yeah,
whatever it
just over
is.
that.
Once they hit that profit,
Yeah,
then they will start to pay tax, and that'll
yeah,
be done through a tax return, which we'll talk about
yeah. We
later.
can come on to that in a minute. Yeah,
Okay. What about the people who have a paid job? So let's just take, for example, somebody that's a nurse.
yeah,
The nurse, and they've started to do this on the side at weekends. They're sourcing at car boot sales. They're selling for profit.
yeah.
What would happen then?
So what will happen is they will continue being paid as normal. They'll do their pay as you earn as they go along and pay their tax and national insurance. Then when they come and do a tax return, they will put that on. So you need to make sure you know where your P60 is from that you get from your employer. and you'll put that into your tax return, and then you'll put all the income and the expenses from your business from selling items, and then at the end there's a calculator, and it will calculate how much tax you need to pay. Say you made £5,000 profit in your year, they will then add that onto the top of your salary from your work, and you will pay tax on that whole amount. So it will depend on what the whole amount is. So, for example, somebody who has, say, the nurse, she's maybe earning £35,000 a year. She has £5,000 from her selling business. She will pay tax on £40,000 altogether.
Okay.
And it will depend on what the tax rates are at the current time. But the revenue website will work that out for you when you do your tax return.
And so what'll happen, I guess, is that because they've already paid the tax in their pay slips
Yeah,
every month for the
yeah,
job, that's done.
yeah,
The
exactly.
bill will just be the difference.
It'll just be the addition on the end. And actually, that's another really good point, just to add maybe at this time is, and we can talk about it a bit more afterwards, but you need to save some money to pay that tax. So it is quite a good idea to just calculate as you go along. And my rule of thumb for people is save 25% of your profit on every item for your tax bill,
Okay.
and save it as you go along.
And that will cover.
Yeah, it cover your tax and national insurance. Hopefully you'll have a bit extra left over, but I'd much prefer that we saved a little bit and there was a bonus when we came to pay our tax bill than we were scrabbling around trying to find an extra few pounds. And obviously, though, if you're in a job and you're employed and you're earning and paying 40% tax, and then you're selling on top of that, you're going to need to save a little bit more.
Right, okay. So if we just rewind for people who no experience of this whatsoever, how would somebody go about registering and then doing a self-assessment?
Yeah, so you can register at any time, and the revenue like you to register within 3 months of setting up your business. But don't worry, if you haven't done it, they will always prefer that you do it than you don't do it. So it doesn't matter if you're a bit late. But if you're at that point where you're kind of, right, I've got more than £1,000 worth of sales, then you need to go on and register. Literally just go into Google and register with HMRC for self-assessment.
In fact, I could put that in the
Yeah,
show
yeah,
notes.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
put the
You can
link to
do
that.
it. You just go in there and it basically just takes you through the information. It'll get you to put some basics in, so your name, address, national insurance number, and then it will provide you with a government gateway code, and then you'll be able to access your tax return when it's time to fill it in. But there is a delay in the whole process. So if, say, you decided today that you need to register and you go on and register, which is great, but your period for your trade will be from the 6th of April 2025 to the 5th of April 2026. So you're not actually going to need to fill in a tax return until after that time.
Right.
So although you'll register, just make sure that you write down your government gateway, you know what your password is, just keep all that information and you'll be able to log in later on.
Okay. Right. So completing a tax return for those people that have already registered, like
Yeah,
myself and others last tax year, now is the time now to start
yeah,
tax returns for that period 2024 to
yeah,
2025.
yeah.
So how do people go about doing that?
Okay, so the revenues website is really helpful. It takes you through step by step. So all we do is we log on and it will come up with a series of questions. And it will be things like, have you had any self-employment income? Have you had any employment income? It'll also ask you about every other sort of income, so dividends and property and foreign investments. And you just say yes and no to all of those questions. And it just takes 15, 20 minutes. Nothing to catch you out. They're not trying to catch you out with anything. They're just quite straightforward questions. Then, for the ones that you said yes to, it will then formulate your tax return for you. And again, you'll just log into each section and start to fill it in. So if you have got some employment, you'll go into the employment section, pop in the name of your employer and how much you've earned, how much tax you've paid. All that information's on your P60. So don't worry, you haven't got to go and ask your employer for a load of information or anything like that. You'll find it all from there. And then for your self-employment one, it will just take you through. It will ask you what your total turnover for the year was. And then it will ask you all about your expenses. And while you're in quite a small business, those expenses can just be filled in as one number, or you can break them down into different categories if you want to.
Right.
But it does take you through it all step by step.
Okay. And it's all online and it's just fillable in and you can save, can't you? You
Yeah.
can do it in chunks and come back to it. You don't have
Yeah,
to.
yeah, absolutely. And you can do it and you can run the calculation so that you know what it's going to be, but then not submit it. Although don't forget to go back and submit it later because people do that occasionally.
Oh,
Kind of like, oh, I know what it is, it's fine. But yeah, you can just go in one day and answer all the questions and then go back. But it isn't a lengthy process. I actually had a client yesterday who messaged me and said, I've done my tax return for the year. It took me 90 minutes in total, and she'd blocked out the time and done it. So it isn't going to be something that's going to take you days and days or anything like that. It's
no.
just pulling all the information together and then popping it in.
Okay. So you register online as a, well, somebody's asked about sole trader and company. We'll come back to that. But as a sole trader, for example, when you're just
Yeah.
starting out, and then you'll automatically be put in the system, the tax return
Mhm.
bit will be there. It's called self-assessment. You can log into that. It's all in your portal, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just there for you, right? And you go in, do that, submit it, pay your bill online if you owe anything, because
Yes.
we've touched on expenses. So should we talk expenses? Because I think some people aren't clear. You make your profit, but then you can deduct from that profit certain expenses
Yeah.
from the business. So would you be able to just give us a little rundown of the kinds of things?
Yeah. So the basic rule that the revenue talk about is that expenses need to be wholly and exclusively related to your business. So we can talk about that a little bit more. But so we've got the selling price. So let's say, for example, you bought a painting for £20 and you've sold it for £50. So your turnover is your £50. That's what you sold it for. And then any costs relating to that purchase, we can then put against it. So the buying price of it is what the first obvious main one. Then we start to talk about postage and packaging materials and anything else, the fees that you might have been charged on a selling site. So all those things are directly related to the selling of that painting. Then, as a business as a whole, we might also have some expenses of running the business. You might have some apps that you use that help you with uploading things. You might have, I know you bought a printer, so that is an expense of the business. What you can't include is things that it's like, oh, well, I have a uniform. I have wear these clothes when I go selling, buying or sourcing stuff. So can I claim those? And it's like, no, that's different. You can, a uniform, it has to be branded basically. So if you've got a business and it's branded, but we'll not go into that. That's kind of
So if somebody had a shop and like an
yes,
antique
yeah,
shop or a vintage shop, different. But if you're just selling
different.
home
Yeah, but
online,
if you, yeah, and you have branded wear with, because generally people, if you've got your logo on your kind of shirt that you wear for work, you're probably not going to wear it to go out at a weekend socially. But if
right?
you're just wearing your normal clothes, you can't classify those
Yeah.
as a business expense. So it has to be. Something else you might put through is some mileage. So if you're specifically going to antique fair or something like that, you can claim mileage for doing that through as expenses in your business.
Perfect.
And I
Okay.
would always recommend you charge mileage. Don't just put the receipt through for filling your car up at the garage, because that might not be the amount that you've used. And the mileage rate covers a little bit for repairs and renewals as well. So
Okay. So just so people are aware, I do my mileage on a little app.
Mm.
So, and it just picks up my journeys, puts them on, and I just swipe whether it was a personal or a business
Yeah.
journey. I'm not getting paid to promote that. Yeah, it's called Mile Tracker or something. There's loads of them, and I do pay I think £4 a month for that, but it actually saves me so much time because every time I nip out to do a delivery or I'm
Yeah.
sourcing, I swipe, and it gives me a little record at the end of the month. It's accurate, and then I can deduct that £4 for the app off my expenses,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
okay,
So yeah, anything that is related to the item you're selling or for you to be able to run the business. So if you trying to think other things that you might have unique into your business, but any professional fees. So, if you go down the route of having an accountant or, you need a solicitor maybe for some contracts or anything like that, if you get bigger and you start employing people, then they're a cost of your business.
yeah.
But it has to be things that are specifically related to your business.
Okay. So storage as well, all of those things that
Yeah,
are
all
anything to
that.
do with
Yeah.
me and insurance and stuff. What about food and drink when out? So you go to an antiques fair for the day. Somebody's actually posted that question, which I thought was a really good question.
Mhm.
You're going out sourcing for the whole day. Can I claim my lunch as a business expense?
It's a grey area, and actually probably not. The revenue guidance on that is that you need to eat, is part of living kind of thing, and you would normally have lunch. There are some exceptions occasionally if you're maybe entertaining people, you have a dinner for a client or something like that. There are exceptions, but generally meals that you would normally have, if you would normally have lunch, therefore you can't claim lunch.
Okay. But meeting with another business seller or something that you're doing as a business discussion.
Yeah, as long as it's got to be trivial though. We're not going off to some Michelin star restaurant for lunch and
No,
putting through and that kind of thing. It kind
at
of
eight
needs to
o'clock at
be
night after
trivial. Yeah.
I've had a full day charity shopping. I'm going to go to the Ivy
Yeah.
tonight. No, yeah, I get that. That's really fair. So just being really sensible about that
Yeah.
is the answer, isn't it? I
Yeah,
guess.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tick that one off because I don't want to lose track of the questions that we've covered because I do want to go through the specific Instagram
Yes.
questions
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
we have some really good ones. Okay, so expenses, I think we've covered. Paying tax, I think we've covered this really. It does seem scary. So you pay what it comes out of the calculation. You just pay that online, don't you?
Yeah.
Bank
Yeah.
transfer. We've covered if you've already got a job and you're doing this on the side. What about national insurance? If
So similar kind of thing as your tax, really. Some people will, if you've got a job, pay as you earn and national insurance, you will already be paying some national insurance. There's been a lot of press about it recently about going online and checking that you've paid enough and you've got enough years back because you can do voluntary top-ups. If you don't have any employment and you're not paying any national insurance, you can do voluntary top-ups. If you do a self-assessment tax return, it will ask you, one of the questions it will ask you is if you would like to make voluntary national insurance contributions if you haven't earned enough. And if you have earned enough, it will put that on your tax bill and that'll be an amount that you need to pay.
so it's all included in your
Yeah,
self-assessment,
yeah.
basically.
There will be a question on it.
Okay, so what class is it?
So class 2, and you get some class 4 as well in self-assessment, but in slightly larger businesses. So yeah, it's class 2 and class 4, and class 3 is the usual voluntary one.
Okay, right. So, but people don't need to really worry about all of that. It's just going to be in
Don't
those.
worry about the classes. No, not at all. And just keep an eye on your record on that, just to make sure that you're keeping it topped up, because you can go back 6 years.
Okay, lovely. Because we don't think about these things, and if it is just your only job, I guess people are scared, especially because of all the stuff in the press. That am I going to be paying enough here? Do I know I've paid? But it's in your self-assessment, and everybody
Yeah,
can.
you can make the voluntary contributions. Yeah. And the other thing, just to say on that and paying tax and national insurance is if you were trading last year and you need to do your tax return any time from now, right through to the 31st of January 26, do it now. You don't need to pay the tax now, but you'll know how much the tax is.
Right.
So the sooner you do it, sooner you know what your tax bill is going to be for January.
Great tip. So, and the deadline, everybody's probably heard the self-assessment deadline is the end of Jan
Yeah,
when you have to pay that bill.
yeah.
Amazing, Emma. This is so helpful for people, I'm sure. It's really good. It's really clear. Would you tell me then, we're talking about keeping a record of what you're buying, what you're selling. What would you advise people have in their record?
Yeah, so I would say to start with, there's nothing wrong with an Excel spreadsheet. You know, we all see the adverts and they'll start pinging up for Xero or QuickBooks or anything like that. But actually, to start with, there's nothing wrong with an Excel spreadsheet, or even doing it if you're not Excel, you know, if you don't like spreadsheets and things, just have a pad, a notebook. The most important thing is to keep a record somewhere.
Okay.
And I would have two things. So I actually have a client who has quite a small self-employed business, and she has a notebook, and at the front she has everything that she buys, and at the back she has everything that she sells. So she's
Right.
kind of got income at one side and expenses at the other, or two sheets on an Excel spreadsheet. It's perfect. And
Okay.
really, the main things you need to include are the date for, on the income side, is the date that you sold it, what it was you sold, and how much money came in.
Okay. Okay.
That's simple. What you might want to do is have different categories though for your sales. It's like anything, the more information you record, the more information you can extract out of it. And information is powerful in a business. It's, where did we sell it and what type? So say for you, Jen, in your business, you might have paintings as one, or your brass kind of items as another, or you might have ornaments, say, as another category, and break them down. I would be wary of breaking it down too much though, because otherwise you just can't. It's like, oh, what is this then? Where shall I put this? You don't want too many categories, but 5 to 10 is quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the expenses side, again, date, what it was that you bought, and the amount that you bought it for. And again, I would put it in different categories. So I would have one for postage and packaging. I'd have one for any software or apps that you've got, maybe insurance in one, all the different types of expenses. A separate one for fees, maybe.
Okay. And you need to keep all the receipts, don't you, for
You
this?
do, yeah. So keep all the paperwork. I quite like quite a simple system on Excel, is that I will put a number next to each line, and then I will put that same number on the receipt
Okay.
so that you
Perfect.
can just match it up. And at any time, if you're like, oh, what was that for again? And particularly when you're buying things as well, if you are at an auction and you buy some different lots, they might not, it depends on the auction house, but they might not have the description of what it was. So I would physically write on them. Or if you've been in a charity shop, it won't necessarily say what the items were. So I would just pop a note on there, just to keep your tracking a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's a good tip. And you can just photograph the receipts and keep them
Mm.
electronically as well, can't you,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you prefer?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
people
Yeah,
can do
just have
that
a
on their
little folder
phone.
in your Photos app that you just keep them in.
Yeah. So I have a little app because I just like I'm a bit of a well, I like everything organized on my phone, I have to say, and otherwise I just lose stuff. So that I just have an app that takes a photograph of my receipt and I can categorize it on the app and it stores it away and it tots them all up for me
Yeah,
as it goes along and so on. And it produces me a little monthly report as well. So again, another thing there if people want to do that, I guess, just to make
yeah.
it easier, not expensive, these little apps as well. So I think that's really helpful because it's about setting yourself up the way that you ready
Mhm.
so that you can expand and grow. And that's something I've learned from you over the years. It's always that have the systems in place, even though you might feel tiny at the moment. Just start as you mean to go on, and that really rung in my ears when I started this last year. And now, like my inventory and my record keeping, it just suddenly grows, and you're thinking, wow, if I didn't have that system in place from the start, I would be so lost now. I wouldn't have a clue, and I'd be panicking about the tax return. But because I've learned from you about being really thoughtful and careful and doing this, and I kind of have a monthly meeting with myself at the end of every month. I just cross-check everything and do it all, and it can take me a morning, but I can sleep at night because I know my figures are right at the end of every month, and
Yeah.
when it comes to tax return time, everything's just there.
Yeah, I think
So
that's the thing. It's just keeping on top of things. I quite like the idea that you spend 5 minutes on your finances every day. So it's 5 minutes every day, 10 minutes a week, you know, maybe an hour a month, but all those little bits just keep on top of things.
yeah, that's a good
Um,
tip.
Something else that we haven't mentioned that's another thing to kind of related to your record keeping is a separate bank account.
Mhm.
So it isn't a legal requirement for a sole trader to have a business bank account. You might want to do a business bank account, but even if you just have a separate personal bank account to keep it all in, like I said before, because HMRC can ask to see all of your information if they were to do an investigation, it's so much easier to say, this is all my business stuff. And here you go. And they'll take that to start with. If you're saying, here's all my personal stuff as well, oh, and that was my supermarket shop, and that was this, and that was that, it is a massive thing. So actually, just at a point where you're kind of, this is more than just me selling off a few of the kids' toys and a few bits of clothes. This is going to be a business. Just keep it in a separate bank account.
Yeah.
And
And
then,
you
yeah, I was just saying, it's just easier to reconcile it all up then as well, because you're not searching through pages of transactions.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I did the same thing, and I've got a separate, just a personal account. 'Cause you can have more than one personal account. I
Yeah.
don't think people always realise that. I do know somebody uses Monzo. I don't use Monzo. I'm not here to advocate for certain banks, but I think the nice thing with Monzo, which I learned recently, if you're doing a stall and selling on a stall, it produces a QR code for the amount. So if you want to get £20 off somebody, you can pop it into Monzo as a request. It produces a QR code. So the customer literally just takes a photo of the QR code and that's the payment link. So I'm going to name her. It was Leanna, Esme's Heirlooms. I bought a job lot offer. She showed me this. So she said, you don't need a card reader anymore.
That's
If you,
incredible.
yeah, you can just literally, people can
Yeah.
just take a photograph, as long as they've got a smartphone with them, they can take
Mm.
a photograph of the QR and it's a payment link. So I use Starling, similar, but that you can send a payment link to somebody and it's secure very quickly, just there and then. So, some people don't like clicking on payment links, but the QR code I thought was genius because
Mm.
actually you're not
Yeah.
clicking on a link, you're just taking a photo and it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we digress, but these little tips are really helpful, I think, because people don't always think about that, and that bank account thing has definitely helped me. Just at the end of every month, it's there. I know
Yeah.
what I've spent, what I've earned
Mhm.
on one statement.
Yeah. And
Good.
also, it just keeps, you can keep a bit of a track of it. You
Mm,
can kind of see, oh,
mm,
crikey, there's a bit of money in there. Oh,
mm,
and I would never, cash is king, people will say in business, but
mm.
actually you do need the records to back that up. But it does just give you a little bit of a glance at where you
Yeah.
are with things.
Of when I can go to the Ivy.
Yeah.
Look at that. No, so actually a really important point that does come up, I'm surprised nobody asked this, but I have been asked it before, is if you're buying at a car boot sale and you don't get a receipt, what happens then, Emma?
I know. So ideally you will get a receipt, but obviously you're not always going to. I would, if they've, on a stall and they've got stickers on things, take a photo just to record it. If not, almost create your own receipt that you make a note, make sure you've got a record, and you put that in your file or in your photos in the same way as you would for anything else. But it is hard. You've just got to be honest.
Yeah,
People will not be caught out for being honest.
no, no.
So yeah.
And we do these things. We talk about this. The likelihood of HMRC coming knocking on your door when you're just starting up and buying a few bits at a car boot sale, pretty slim, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure they're
Oh yeah,
quite
it's pretty
surprised.
slim. Yeah, yeah. Usually, and not always, because they will do completely random checks, but
Mm,
usually something has red flagged at their end for them to look into you. But they do a certain number of randoms, but equally they don't do that many. So don't the chances of you being inspected is relatively low, but it isn't impossible.
Yeah.
We're all honest people. If we're just keeping honest records, we're doing our best. And I would say HMRC are not trying to catch you out. They are
Mm,
not there. I know we all kind of think, oh, crikey, you know, they're really scary. They're not.
mm,
And if you have reason to ring them and speak to them, they're very helpful. They will give you advice. You
mm,
might just have to be on hold for quite a long time, although
mm.
they're not these really horrible people, and they're not going to whisk you off to jail at second glance or give you big fees and fines and things like that. They are also there to help. So try not to worry about them too much.
Amazing. Oh, brilliant. I'm just going to have a quick check now what we've covered. Starting out with, we've covered that mixture of personal belongings and things you've bought to sell for profit. Keep like almost like separate records of those.
Mm-hmm.
Trading allowance we've covered. That is increasing, isn't it, at some point?
Yes, but not for a couple of years. So it's going to be £1,000. Then it's going up to £3,000. Pretty sure it's the 5th of April 2027 or 6th of April 2027.
Okay.
But so we've got a couple more years at 1,000 anyway. But yeah, keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, but for now we're working on that
Yeah,
1,000. We've
yeah,
covered self-assessment and how to do it, I think. I
yeah,
hope people are all clear. They can certainly post comments under the video if they've got questions. So
yeah,
when you've got all your records, I've put here what next. Well, the what next is you just keep your records monthly and you register and you do a self-assessment when it's your
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the revenue will, you don't need to worry about, once you've registered, they will send you emails or letters in the post, depending on what your preferences are when you register. So don't worry that you're kind of like, oh, I must remember that I'll have to do that.
Mm.
They'll send you them throughout the year. And particularly once you get to November, December time, they'll send, you know, is it too late? If you register for emails, they're quite useful emails regularly and just prompts and things. So
Oh, look forward to a bunch of emails from HMRC landing, Emma. They might be fun for someone like you.
no, they do. Yeah, so they do remind you. So don't worry that you kind of got to have a reminder and things for that, and you've got to do it. It will happen. You know, they'll send you reminders.
And there is a cut-off date I read somewhere for redness. It's something to do with an October date
Yeah.
or something.
So that's sort of historical because when they first brought everybody doing things electronically, they still had paper returns as well.
Right, right.
But the deadline for paper returns is October. There
Um,
is still occasionally a need for a paper return for some complex tax situations. So the deadline for them is still the 5th of October. They ask that everybody is registered prior to the 5th of October to ensure that you're not one of those complex cases.
right.
So
Okay.
basically, January is your deadline as long as you know you're fairly simple kind of system. Most people, you will know if you're a complex situation. Don't worry about it. So yeah, January will be your deadline.
Oh, you're so reassuring. I love this. It's so helpful. I think we've covered expenses. There are things on the HMRC website about expenses and what's
Yeah,
allowed.
yeah, just one other thing to add, and it depends how much you're working in this business, but the use of home as office. So if you're based at home, and there's kind of things for lighting and heating and things like that, if you're running your business rather than being in an office, the best thing to do is just to look it up on HMRC's website. But it starts from you working more than 25 hours a month in your business. So if that's what you're doing, if you're working more than 25 hours a month, then you can just make a little deduction for that.
Okay, right. And people would look that up on the HMRC
Yeah,
website.
yeah. So it's like a scale they have. So if it's between 25 and 40 hours, 40 and the amounts increase. And it's just a standard amount that they say you can take off for each month. But
And is that what you call simplified expenses?
yes, it is. Very good.
Yay! Do I get a 10 out of 10 for that?
Yeah,
Okay. But it's worth putting on your return because it knocks down the tax you pay a little bit,
exactly.
doesn't it? So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Right. So I've got now the questions from Instagram. We've covered the lunch expenses one, which I thought was a really good
Yeah,
question.
no, no, it's good.
When do I declare to HMRC and how? I am totally lost. So when is you're saying as soon as you've hit £1,000
Yeah,
turnover?
yeah, yeah, definitely. As soon as you're getting to that £1,000, or if you're kind of like, oh, I'm going to be over this in the next month or so, then that's the time to do it. But you are going to be within, I know we just talked about the October thing, but that is for the previous year. So people that have already happened. So you should have already registered for self-employed if you were up to that limit last year.
Right.
This year, if you're going to hit that limit in the next few weeks, that's the time to register.
Okay. And if somebody hasn't registered and they've not hit those deadlines, do they need
The
to
most
worry at
important
this
thing is just
point?
to go on and do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just register and yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it'll just take it from there.
Yes. Yeah,
There
exactly.
must be like thousands of people out there that are in this situation because they just don't know what they don't know, do they?
No. And that's why HMRC would much prefer that you were late registering and you did it
Yeah.
than you thought, oh, I haven't done it, I'm going to be in trouble. Oh, I'll just go and do something over here and then I'll go and do something over there and I'll just forget about it and I'll bury my head in the sand. That's probably not the way to deal with it. They would always prefer that people register on time, but if you haven't, the best time to do it is today.
Okay. And you're not going to get in trouble. It's not like they're going to be fining you or anything, is
No,
it?
no, no,
People
no,
don't
it's
know.
fine because your tax isn't due yet. If
Right.
you if you suddenly are sitting here watching this and thinking, oh, I probably should have done a tax return a couple of years ago,
Hmm.
then it's worth talking to them and probably getting some professional advice,
Right.
particularly to your situation.
Yeah.
And they may well charge you a little bit of interest and things for that. But it is much better to go to them, be upfront. I've made a mistake. How do I go from here? And sorting it out than it is hoping it's going to go away and in 3 or 4 years' time, them coming and finding you. Because I think we mentioned earlier on about accounts. So Vinted and eBay and things will now, once you hit those limits of £1,000, they will ask you for your national insurance number and they will then be passing that on to HMRC. And that is only so that then they're going to match you up. So like for you, Jill, you give them your national insurance number and then they say, have we got a tax return for her? Oh yeah, she's done a self-assessment tax return. That's okay. If they pick you up and you haven't got one, they'll be, we ought to be hearing something from this person. So it is important to be honest with them.
That's really important. Thank you for that because I do know lots of sellers that are in this community have messaged me about that. Vinted have asked me for my national insurance, eBay have asked me. Yeah, great. It just means that they're going to expect a tax return. So, okay, that's great because I did wonder myself, well, what actually happens with this? Why are they doing this? And people get frightened. I mean, if we're already registered, you just sleep easily, don't you? So that's your tip is get
Yeah.
sorted.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you kind of think, oh, I should have done this a while ago, just be honest with them because
Mm,
they will help you sort it out.
mm. Okay.
So
No,
yeah.
that's good. Let's check the questions. We've done that. I have a part-time job I sell on the side, personal and things I buy. I'm worried about records. We've covered that. Just keep the record
Just keep all the
notebook.
information.
Okay. Can you register as a sole trader when you file your tax return?
So you can, but I would always recommend doing it sooner. There is the 3 month limit. So as soon as you are trading as a sole trader, which is at the point where it isn't personal anymore and you're doing it in order to make money as a business, then that's the point to register. But like we just said, the sooner you do it, the better. But if you haven't done it, today's the best day to do it.
They're going to be inundated. Um, how much tax do I pay when I start paying is one of the questions.
Yeah, so I think we covered off some of this. It will depend on your other income, not just your employment, but if you have any property you rent out, or if you have any savings income, or any dividend income, or pensions,
Yeah,
all of your income will be added into a big pot and calculated the total tax you owe. Then they will take off any tax you've already paid, and that will be the amount that you will pay.
lovely. Okay. And
And all the limits, I haven't mentioned them all here because it just gets confusing when you're talking individual numbers, but you can just look them up online just to see, what tax rate will I be paying? And it'll show you at what point you go into what your personal allowance is, what 22% 22% tax is and what 40% tax is, and it'll show you all that.
Perfect. I think, yeah, because if you're a lower rate taxpayer, you pay 22% up to a certain amount, and then it
Yeah.
becomes 40%. Yeah. Okay. And then two questions that I think are really good, and I think this one is really hard to answer. Is it better to be registered as a sole trader or a limited company?
Yeah, so this has changed quite a lot in the last couple of years or so. It always used to be the right thing to do was to be a sole trader up until you paid 40% tax. Once you got to 40% tax, it was better to be a limited company. There's hardly anything in it anymore, really. But owning a limited company and running a limited company has quite a few expenses linked to it. So you need your accounts to be done professionally. You have to file with Companies House and all those other things. So there's lots of other considerations. So you definitely would want some professional advice before registering a company. But if you're, in quite a big business and you're getting to the point of paying quite a lot of tax, then definitely it's something to consider. If this is something that you're doing on the side or something like that, you're probably going to want to stay as a sole trader. If it's kind of a smaller, below 40% tax, leave it as it is.
Brilliant answer. Love that. Thank you, Emma. That's really helpful. And then I just thought this was really nice. The basic must-dos when starting a business. And I thought it would be a great sum-up question,
Yeah.
actually, because we've covered it all. But what would you say are like the prime basics?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is, and we've talked about it a lot, is to register with HMRC.
Mm-hmm.
Google it, we can put the link in anyway, and go in and register with them if you haven't already. The next thing is record keeping. It's just records, records, records. And I know that sometimes that can feel really overwhelming, but keep it really simple. Keep it with something that you are really comfortable with. If it is pen and paper, use that. I'd much prefer that people do something that they're comfortable with than they get completely overwhelmed. I've had clients come to me and somebody's recommended that they buy a software like Zero, and then well, I've got it and I'm paying for it every month, but I just have no idea what I'm doing with it. Don't do that. Just stick with whatever you are most comfortable with and record everything, keep evidence. So
Amazing.
everything that you buy, record it. Everything that you sell, record it. That's it.
Fantastic. Oh, that's really simple. Two really simple steps, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Just,
Don't overcomplicate anything
yeah.
and have a separate bank account.
Oh, yes. Three great tips there.
Three things.
Okay. So I think we've covered, I mean, honestly, I can't thank you enough because it's phenomenal what you've been
Pleasure.
through there. I think we've done just under an hour, and that was just so helpful to hear all of that. There will always be loads of grey. Everybody's situation is different. And I guess it's a really good time to just say that you are available to people should they wish to have a one-to-one personal call with you. And I'm just so delighted, Emma, because this is like the best value for money. I cannot tell. I'm staring into the camera. This is an hour with Emma will just change everything for you and bring so much clarity, and she'll be able to look at your situation individually and talk through all of your different pieces, because everybody's different, aren't they? Like the way we're running this, we're all doing the similar thing, but so different. So you're offering your Untangle My Finances hour to anybody that wants to book one.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me.
No. So basically everything that you said really, it's unique to you because we've all got other things going on in our lives, whether it's employment or maybe even you've got another business. You've got lots of different things going on. So it is an hour of my time, and we just look at whatever is important to you in your business, wherever you are, whatever your struggle is, that's the thing that we'll focus on. And if you need some templates and things like that, I can help you with that. We can look at any rules. We can look at whatever it is that's causing you those sleepless nights, really, that's causing you to think, oh, I need to get this sorted out. And what do I do next? So, yeah, let me know if that's of interest to you.
Perfect. I just want to say as well, a disclaimer that I am not being paid a penny to
No.
promote this at all. This is purely just, you've done me a wonderful favour by coming on here to talk to the people that are watching this about this, and I think it's just so nice that you've done that. There's no money exchanging hands at all.
No, no.
I genuinely would urge everybody to book this hour, and the cost of the hour is
Yeah,
£97 for a
yeah,
full hour, and you'll get templates and things if needed, and you'll
yeah.
get all the support to set up your business. Seriously, this is money well spent, and you could deduct that as a business expense,
It
right?
is. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So it's a win-win. It won't actually cost you anything really if you do it as the girl math. So I really hope that people will take you up on that offer, Emma, because you've given very freely of your time for this hour now and taken us through a lot of the basics, and I'm so grateful for that. But we'll also bob all your details in the description about how to contact
Perfect.
you and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And what is LinkedIn your main platform where you
Yeah,
do
I'm
it?
mainly over on LinkedIn. I don't actually do a lot on Instagram at the moment, but I am also on Facebook, so you can find me on Facebook.
Okay,
So yeah,
wonderful.
there's some bits in there.
Oh, well, Emma, is there anything we've missed, do you think? Any biggies, or are we
I know, I think we've covered it all. Well, we've covered, a lot of the basics, and hopefully everybody feels a little bit better about it. And yeah, it's all
I'm
good.
certain. I'm certain. I thought that was so helpful. Thank you so much. I'd love to know what people think. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Do let us know in the comments any questions, any queries, any feedback. And of course, like and subscribe. That would help me loads to keep doing this channel and growing it. So I'm very grateful as well to all of you that have watched today. Thanks, Emma, and I will catch up with you very, very soon, my love.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.